Marcus wiped his hands on his apron and glanced at the clock hanging above the small cafe kitchen. 3 o'clock meant Emma would be walking through those glass doors any minute now, her school bag bouncing against her hip, and that bright smile lighting up his entire world. At 42, Marcus had learned that the best moments in life often came in the simplest packages. The bell above the door chimed, and there she was. 9-year-old Emma burst through the entrance like sunshine breaking through clouds, her dark curls bouncing as she practically skipped to the counter where her father worked. The other customers in the cafe couldn't help but smile at the sight of the little girl's infectious energy. "Papa, guess what happened in school today?" Emma announced, dropping her backpack beside the counter with a satisfied thud. Her eyes sparkled with the kind of excitement that only children possess when they have something important to share. Marcus set down the coffee cup he was cleaning and gave his daughter his full attention. This was their ritual, their special time together every afternoon when school ended. The cafe might be busy, customers might be waiting, but Emma always came first. She was his world, his reason for working 16-hour days, his motivation to keep pushing forward despite the challenges of being a single parent. "Tell me everything, sweetheart," Marcus said, leaning against the counter so he could hear every word. He loved these moments, watching Emma's face light up as she shared her daily adventures. Her enthusiasm reminded him why he worked so hard, why every sacrifice was worth it. Emma's face glowed as she began her story. "Mrs. Rodriguez brought in books from different countries today, and when she showed us one in French, I could read it out loud. Then she found one in Spanish, and I read that too. And then—" Emma paused for dramatic effect, bouncing slightly on her toes. "She found books in German and Italian, and I could read those as well." Marcus felt his chest swell with pride. His daughter was extraordinary, and not just because she was his. Emma had a gift for languages that amazed everyone who met her. While other children her age struggled with basic reading, Emma absorbed new languages like a sponge soaking up water. She spoke English and Arabic fluently, thanks to her late mother's heritage. But her curiosity had led her to pick up French, Spanish, German, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, and even some Mandarin Chinese. "The whole class was so quiet, Papa. Even Tommy, who never stops talking, just stared at me with his mouth open." Emma giggled, covering her mouth with her small hand. "Mrs. Rodriguez said I'm like a walking dictionary." "What's a walking dictionary, Papa?" Before Marcus could answer, the cafe door opened with more force than usual. A man in an expensive suit entered, speaking loudly into his gold-plated phone. His voice carried across the small space, filled with the kind of arrogance that made Marcus's jaw tighten slightly. The man's shoes probably cost more than Marcus. Made in a month, and everything about his posture screamed wealth and entitlement. The newcomer was Rashid al-Mansouri, though Marcus didn't know his name yet. Rashid was exactly the kind of person who believed money could buy respect, admiration, and the right to look down on others. His family owned oil wells across the Middle East, luxury hotels in Dubai, and enough real estate to house a small city. At 35, he had never worked a real day in his life, never struggled to pay a bill, never wondered where his next meal would come from. Rashid finished his phone call with a sharp snap and approached the counter, his eyes scanning the humble cafe with obvious disdain. The mismatched chairs, the hand-painted menu board, the simple decorations that Marcus and Emma had put up together, all of it seemed to offend his sensibilities. This was not the kind of place someone of his status should have to visit. "I need coffee," Rashid announced, not asked, as if Marcus existed solely to serve him. His accent was thick, cultured, the kind that came from expensive private schools and exclusive social circles. "Make it strong. I have important business to conduct, and I cannot afford to be delayed by weak coffee from." He paused, looking around with barely concealed disgust. This establishment. Marcus nodded politely, accustomed to difficult customers. Running a small cafe in the city meant dealing with all types of people, and he had learned long ago to keep his personal feelings separate from his professional responsibilities. "Of course, sir. Would you like our house blend or perhaps something stronger? We have excellent espresso." Emma, who had been listening to the exchange with growing curiosity, noticed the man's accent immediately. Her eyes lit up with recognition and excitement. Languages were her passion, her gift, and she loved identifying different accents and dialects. Without thinking, she stepped forward slightly, her natural friendliness overcoming any sense of intimidation she might have felt. "You're from the Middle East," Emma said with genuine enthusiasm, her voice bright with interest. "I can tell from your accent. Are you from Lebanon, Syria, or maybe Jordan? I love learning about different countries and their languages. Do you speak Arabic? I speak Arabic too. My mama taught me before she went to heaven." Rashid looked down at Emma as if she were an annoying insect that had buzzed too close to his face. His expression shifted from mere annoyance to something much colder, much more cruel. Here was this child, this daughter of a cafe worker, daring to speak to him as if they were equals. The audacity was breathtaking. "Listen, little girl," Rashid said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I don't have time for childish games. Your father should teach you not to bother important people with silly questions. Children should be seen, not heard, especially children from—" He gestured dismissively around the cafe, his meaning clear. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but before he could respond, Emma's face fell. The excitement and joy that had been radiating from her just moments before crumbled like a sandcastle hit by a wave. Her small shoulders drooped, and she took a step back, suddenly looking much younger than her 9 years. "I was just being friendly," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. "I like meeting new people and learning about where they come from. I didn't mean to bother you, mister." The silence in the cafe became thick and uncomfortable. Other customers had stopped their conversations, sensing the tension that now filled the air like smoke from a burning building. Marcus felt his protective instincts surge forward like a tidal wave. Nobody, absolutely nobody, spoke to his daughter that way. Not in his cafe, not anywhere. Rashid seemed completely unaware of the effect his words had on Emma, or the growing anger of everyone around him. In his world, people like Marcus and Emma were background noise, barely worth noticing unless they were serving him something he wanted. He pulled out his phone again, scrolling through messages while completely ignoring the little girl whose enthusiasm he had just crushed. "Emma, sweetheart, why don't you go sit at our special table and start your homework?" Marcus suggested gently, his voice carefully controlled despite the rage building inside him. Their special table was a small corner booth where Emma always did her schoolwork while he finished his shift. It was decorated with her drawings and had a small lamp that cast warm light over her books. Emma nodded silently, gathering her backpack, with none of her usual energy. As she walked toward the corner booth, Marcus noticed how small she looked, how her normally confident stride had become hesitant and uncertain. The sight broke his heart and made his anger burn even hotter. "Sir, I'll have your coffee ready in just a moment," Marcus said to Rashid, his voice professional but noticeably cooler than before. He began preparing the espresso with quick, efficient movements, each action sharp with barely contained emotion. Rashid glanced up from his phone with irritation. "And keep that child quiet. I have business calls to make, and I don't need distractions from untrained children who don't know their place. This is exactly what's wrong with people today. No discipline, no respect for hierarchy." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He gripped the espresso cup so tightly his knuckles turned white. Behind him, he could hear Emma's pencil moving across paper as she tried to focus on her homework, but he could tell from the hesitant scratching sounds that her heart wasn't in it. Her spirit had been dampened by this stranger's cruelty. An elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, who had been a regular customer for 3 years, stood up from her table near the window. She was a retired teacher who had always admired Emma's intelligence and kindness. Her face showed the kind of indignation that only comes from witnessing injustice. "Excuse me, young man," Mrs. Chen said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades commanding respect in classrooms. "That little girl was simply being polite and friendly. There was no reason to speak to her so harshly. She's one of the brightest, most well-mannered children I've ever met." Rashid looked at Mrs. Chen with the same dismissive expression he had given Emma. "Madam, I don't recall asking for your opinion. This is between me and the service staff. Perhaps you should focus on your own business and allow others to handle theirs. Mrs. Chen's eyes flashed with anger. But before she could respond, Rashid had turned back to Marcus. My coffee, if you please. I don't have all day to waste in this place. Marcus set the espresso cup down on the counter with more force than necessary. The small ceramic cup clinked against the saucer, the sound sharp in the tense atmosphere. Here's your coffee, sir. That'll be $4.50. As Rashid reached for his wallet, pulling out bills that looked like they had never been folded or handled by working hands, Emma looked up from her homework. Despite the man's earlier rudeness, her natural curiosity and love of languages overcame her hurt feelings. She had been listening to his phone conversations and something had caught her attention. Papa, Emma called softly. The man is speaking in Arabic on his phone, but he's mixing up some words. He said Bairu instead of Bairu when he was talking about going somewhere. That's not quite right. Marcus looked at his daughter with surprise. Emma's ear for languages was incredibly precise. If she said someone was making mistakes, they probably were. But he also worried about how Rashid might react to being corrected, especially by the child he had just insulted. Rashid had overheard Emma's comment, and his face darkened with anger. What did that little girl just say? How dare she eavesdrop on my private conversations? And what would a child in a place like this know about proper Arabic? This is outrageous. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, sir, Marcus said carefully, trying to diffuse the situation. Emma just has a natural gift for languages. She notices these things without meaning to. A gift? Rashid laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. A child from a cafe worker's family claiming to know Arabic better than someone who was born speaking it? This is the most ridiculous thing I've heard all week. Next you'll tell me she speaks French and German too. Emma, despite her earlier hurt, couldn't help but respond. Her love of languages was stronger than her fear of this mean man. Actually, I do speak French and German, and Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, and some Mandarin Chinese. My mama was from Lebanon, and she taught me Arabic when I was little. Then I started learning other languages because I think they're beautiful. The cafe fell completely silent. Even the gentle hum of the espresso machine seemed to pause, as if the entire world was holding its breath. Rashid stared at Emma with a mixture of disbelief and growing anger. He had built his entire sense of superiority on the assumption that people like Emma and her father were ignorant, uneducated, beneath his notice. The possibility that a 9-year-old girl from a simple cafe might actually know more than him about anything was unthinkable. You're lying, Rashid said flatly. Children don't speak 9 languages. Even if they could, they certainly wouldn't learn them in a place like this. You're trying to make me look foolish, and I won't tolerate it. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she stood up straighter. Her mother had always told her to be proud of her gifts, to never hide her intelligence because it made other people uncomfortable. I'm not lying, mister. I can show you if you want. I have books in different languages, in my backpack. Marcus moved protectively closer to his daughter, his anger now barely contained. This man had already hurt Emma once, and he wasn't going to allow it to happen again. But he also knew that Emma needed to stand up for herself, to learn that her gifts were nothing to be ashamed of. Emma, Marcus said gently, if you want to show the gentleman your books, that's fine, but you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Rashid scoffed, pulling out his expensive phone again. This is a waste of my time. I have better things to do than listen to children's fairy tales. Keep your coffee money. I'd rather drink from a vending machine than stay in this circus any longer. Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her small hand, but instead of backing down, something fierce sparked in her expression. She had inherited her father's determination and her late mother's pride. Walking to her backpack with measured steps, she pulled out several colorful books and notebooks, arranging them carefully on the counter like a teacher preparing for a lesson. Since you don't believe me, Emma said, her voice steadier now, I'll show you. She opened a French children's book and began reading aloud. Her pronunciation was flawless, each word flowing into the next with the natural rhythm of a native speaker. Il était une fois une petite fille qui aimait apprendre les langues du monde entier. Rashid stopped scrolling through his phone, his eyes snapping up to stare at Emma. The French was perfect, too perfect for someone trying to fake it. But he convinced himself it was probably memorized, a party trick taught to impress gullible customers. Emma didn't stop there. She closed the French book and opened another one, this time in Spanish. Había una vez una niña que soñaba con viajar por todo el mundo y conocer personas de diferentes culturas. Again, her pronunciation was flawless, her accent authentic. They do. Other customers in the cafe had gathered closer, drawn by the extraordinary display happening before them. Mrs. Chen smiled with pride, having known Emma's abilities for years. A young college student named David pulled out his phone to record, sensing he was witnessing something remarkable. Next came German, and Emma's voice took on the precise, crisp tones of someone who truly understood the language's structure. War einmal ein kleines Mädchen, das glaubte, dass jede Sprache eine Tür zu einer neuen Welt war. Rashid's confident smirk was beginning to waver. 3 languages could possibly be explained away, but the ease with which Emma switched between them was becoming harder to dismiss. Still, his pride wouldn't allow him to admit that this child, this daughter of a simple cafe owner, might actually possess abilities that impressed him. Italian now, Emma announced, opening another book. C'era una volta una bambina che credeva che le parole fossero ponti che collegano i cuori delle persone. Her voice took on the musical quality that Italian demanded, each syllable rolling off her tongue like poetry. The watching crowd began to murmur in amazement. Someone whispered, "Incredible," while another person said, "I've never seen anything like this." The atmosphere in the cafe had shifted completely from tense confrontation to awestruck appreciation. Emma reached for her Portuguese book, her confidence growing with each language she demonstrated. Era uma vez uma menina que acreditava que cada idioma carregava a alma de povo. The nasal tones and unique rhythm of Portuguese flowed from her lips as naturally as breathing. Rashid's phone had lowered completely now, his attention fully focused on the extraordinary child before him. 5 languages, all spoken with native-level fluency. This wasn't memorization or trickery. This was genuine linguistic talent of the highest order. But Emma wasn't finished. She pulled out a notebook filled with Russian text in her own careful handwriting. Жила-была девочка, которая верила, что языки — это мосты между культурами и сердцами людей. The Cyrillic script rolled off her tongue with the same ease as the Romance. Languages had. The cafe was now completely silent except for Emma's voice. Even Rashid seemed to be holding his breath, his earlier arrogance replaced by something that looked suspiciously like shock. His worldview, built on assumptions about class, education, and superiority, was crumbling before his eyes. And finally, Emma said, opening her last notebook, "A little bit of Mandarin Chinese, though I'm still learning this one." She carefully pronounced each character. 空前有一个小女孩，她相信语言是连接世界的桥梁. When Emma finished, the silence in the cafe stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly applause began, first from Mrs. Chen, then from David the college student, then from every customer in the place. The sound filled the small space like thunder, recognition of something truly extraordinary. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes as he watched his daughter take a small bow, her cheeks flushed with accomplishment and joy. This was his Emma, brilliant and brave, refusing to hide her light under a bushel because someone else found it threatening. Rashid stood frozen, his expensive suit and gold watch suddenly feeling less important than they had an hour ago. He had come into this humble cafe convinced of his own superiority, ready to dismiss everyone inside as beneath his notice. Instead, he had encountered a 9-year-old girl who spoke more languages fluently than most university professors, who carried herself with quiet dignity despite his insults, who had just demonstrated abilities that humbled his own accomplishments. For the first time in years, Rashid al-Mansouri felt genuinely ashamed of himself. The feeling was so unfamiliar that he didn't immediately recognize it. He had built his identity around being better than others, around his family's wealth and status giving him the right to look down on people. But what did any of that matter? When faced with genuine talent, real intelligence, authentic grace under pressure. Emma carefully packed her books back into her backpack, her movements precise and calm. She had proven her point without arrogance, had defended herself without attacking others. The contrast between her behavior and his own couldn't have been starker. Where? Rashid's voice came out as a whisper, then he cleared his throat and tried again. Where did you learn all of these languages? Emma looked up at him with eyes that held no anger, despite how cruelly he had treated her. My mama taught me Arabic and English when I was little. She said languages were gifts that let you understand different people and their stories. After she died, Papa got me books and found online videos to help me learn more. I practice every day because I want to travel the world someday and talk to people everywhere. The simplicity of her answer, the pure motivation behind her incredible achievement, hit Rashid like a physical blow. Here was a child who had lost her mother, whose father worked long hours in a small cafe to support them both, who had turned her love of languages into something extraordinary through nothing but determination and natural talent. Your mama, Rashid said slowly. She was Lebanese? Emma nodded. She came to America when she was young, but she never forgot her home. She used to tell me stories in Arabic about the mountains and the sea, about the cedars and the old cities. She said that knowing Arabic would always connect me to that part of who I am. Something inside Rashid's chest twisted painfully as Emma spoke about her mother. His own mother had told him similar stories about their homeland, about the importance of remembering where they came from, about treating others with kindness and respect. When had he forgotten those lessons? When had wealth and status become more important than basic human decency? I owe you an apology, Rashid said quietly, his voice so different from the arrogant tone he had used earlier that several customers looked up in surprise. Both of you. I was rude and cruel and completely wrong about everything. Emma tilted her head, studying his face with the perceptive gaze that children sometimes possess. It's okay, mister. Sometimes grown-ups have bad days and say things they don't mean. Papa taught me that everyone deserves a second chance. Marcus watched the exchange with careful eyes, still protective but beginning to see genuine remorse in the wealthy man's expression. Years of dealing with difficult customers had taught him to read people, and something fundamental had shifted in Rashid's demeanor. No, it's not okay, Rashid insisted, looking directly at Emma with respect for the first time. I judged you and your father based on nothing but my own prejudices. I thought that because you were young, because your father works in a cafe, that somehow made you less important, less intelligent, less worthy of respect. I was completely wrong. He turned to Marcus, his voice heavy with shame. Sir, I don't even know your name, but I insulted you and your daughter in the most unforgivable way. Your child is extraordinary, and you should be incredibly proud of what you've accomplished as a father. My name is Marcus, he replied carefully, still gauging whether this change in attitude was genuine. And this is Emma. I'm Rashid, the wealthy man replied, then paused as if wrestling with something internal. Rashid al-Mansouri. And I need to tell you both something that might help explain, though not excuse, my terrible behavior. Emma had moved closer to her father, but her expression remained open and curious. Despite everything that had happened, she possessed the remarkable ability to see potential good in people. Rashid took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. I grew up speaking Arabic at home, but when I went to expensive schools, I was told to hide my accent to sound more Western, more sophisticated. Over the years, I've lost touch with my mother tongue. The truth is, Emma, you speak Arabic better than I do now. Your pronunciation, your grammar, it's all more authentic than mine. The admission hung in the air like a bridge between two worlds. Mrs. Chen, still sitting at her table, nodded approvingly. The college student David had stopped recording, sensing that this moment was too private for social media. That's why I was so angry when you corrected me, Rashid continued, his voice growing stronger as he faced his truth. Deep down I knew you were right, but I couldn't admit that a child possessed something I had lost through my own choices. Instead of being impressed by your abilities, I felt threatened by them. Emma's eyes widened with understanding. You miss speaking Arabic the way your mama taught you? The question was asked with such gentle perception that Rashid felt tears well up in his eyes. When was the last time anyone had seen through his defenses so clearly, so kindly? I do, he admitted. I miss the stories my grandmother told me, the prayers my mother sang, the way words flowed like music when I was young. I traded all of that away to fit into a world that demanded I become someone else. Marcus felt his anger beginning to transform into something else, something closer to understanding. He knew what it was like to lose important parts of yourself, to make sacrifices that cost more than you realized at the time. Emma suddenly brightened, her natural enthusiasm returning. You could learn it again. I could help you remember the right pronunciations. Languages don't really disappear, they just get quiet. We could make yours loud again. The generosity of her offer, coming so soon after his cruelty toward her, overwhelmed Rashid completely. This child whom he had dismissed and insulted was offering to help him reclaim something precious he had lost. The contrast between her character and his own behavior made him feel smaller than he had ever felt in his life. You would do that? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. After how terribly I treated you, Emma shrugged as if kindness were the most natural thing in the world. That's what friends do, right? They help each other learn and grow. Besides, I love talking about languages with people who understand how special they are. Rashid looked around the small cafe, seeing it with completely different eyes than when he had entered. The mismatched chairs weren't shabby, they were welcoming. The hand-painted menu wasn't unprofessional, it was personal. The simple decorations weren't cheap, they were chosen with love. This wasn't just a business, it was a home, a community, a place where extraordinary things happened every day. I have a confession to make, Rashid said, addressing both Marcus and Emma. I came in here today because my expensive car broke down around the corner. I was angry about the inconvenience, frustrated about being forced to wait in what I considered beneath my standards. I was looking for someone to blame, someone to take my bad mood out on. He paused, looking around at the faces of the other customers, all of whom had witnessed his transformation. Instead, I found something I didn't even know I was looking for. I found humility and wisdom and more genuine class than I've ever seen in the wealthy circles I usually move in. Emma had pulled out one of her Arabic books again, this one filled with traditional stories and poems. Would you like me to read you something in Arabic? Maybe it will help you remember how beautiful it sounds. Without waiting for an answer, she began to recite a classical Arabic poem, her young voice carrying the ancient rhythms and melodies that had been passed down through generations. As she spoke, Rashid felt something deep inside himself awakening. Memories of his childhood, rushing back like a flood. His grandmother's voice echoed in Emma's words. His mother's lullabies lived in her pronunciation. Everything he had thought was gone forever was still there, preserved in the careful speech of a 9-year-old girl who understood the value of cultural heritage better than he ever had. When Emma finished, the cafe was silent again. But this time the silence was filled with beauty and connection rather than tension and anger. Rashid wiped his eyes, no longer caring who saw his emotions. Thank you, he said simply. Thank you for reminding me who I used to be and who I could be again. Over the next hour, something magical happened in the small cafe. What had begun as a confrontation transformed into the most unlikely friendship anyone could have imagined. Rashid, who had entered as an arrogant stranger, found himself genuinely interested in learning about Emma's language journey and Marcus's dedication as a single father. Emma, with her natural teaching instincts, had pulled out more books and was helping Rashid practice Arabic pronunciations he had forgotten. She was patient and encouraging, never making him feel foolish for his mistakes. Instead, she celebrated each small improvement with genuine enthusiasm that reminded him of how learning should feel. Try this word again, Emma said gently, pointing to a line in her Arabic poetry book. It's qalb, which means heart. But you have to make the Q sound deep in your throat like this. She demonstrated the pronunciation perfectly, and Rashid tried to copy her, laughing when he couldn't quite get it right. "You're an excellent teacher," Rashid told her. "Much better than the expensive tutors my parents hired when I was your age. They never made learning feel this enjoyable." Marcus watched from behind the counter, still amazed by the complete transformation in Rashid's behavior. The man who had been so dismissive and cruel an hour ago was now sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Emma's table, looking at her books, with genuine fascination and respect. As they worked together, Rashid began to share stories about his childhood, about his grandmother who spoke only Arabic and told him tales of brave heroes and clever princesses. Emma listened with wide eyes, sometimes asking questions that showed her deep understanding of the culture behind the language. "My city used to say something that I'd forgotten until just now," Rashid said, using the Arabic word for grandmother. "She said that languages are like gardens. If you don't tend them with love and attention, the beautiful flowers stop blooming. I let my Arabic garden become overgrown with weeds of neglect and shame." Emma nodded seriously. "But gardens can always be replanted. That's what Papa and I did when Mama died. We were so sad that we almost stopped taking care of the little garden she had started on our windowsill. Then we realized that keeping it alive was a way to keep her memory alive too." The wisdom in her words struck Rashid deeply. This child understood loss and renewal in ways that his expensive education had never taught him. She had faced tragedy at such a young age but had chosen to transform it into something positive, something that honored her mother's memory while building her own future. "Emma," Rashid said thoughtfully, "what do you want to do when you grow up? With all these languages you speak, you could do anything in the world." Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. "I want to work for the United Nations. I want to help people from different countries understand each other. I think a lot of problems happen because people can't communicate properly, and I want to build bridges between different cultures." The ambition was so pure, so focused on helping others, that Rashid felt humbled once again. At her age, he had been thinking about toys and games. Emma was planning a career dedicated to world peace and understanding. Marcus approached their table, carrying a tray with fresh coffee for Rashid and hot chocolate for Emma. "It's almost closing time," he said gently. "Emma still has homework to finish tonight." Rashid looked up, startled to realize how much time had passed. The afternoon had flown by in a way that his usual routine of business meetings and luxury activities never allowed. He felt more relaxed and genuinely happy than he had in years. "Of course," Rashid said, starting to stand up. Then he paused, looking uncertain for the first time since his transformation began. "I wonder, would it be appropriate for me to ask about visiting again? I realize I have no right to expect forgiveness for my earlier behavior, but I would very much like to continue these Arabic lessons if Emma is willing." Emma bounced in her seat with excitement. "Yes, can we meet tomorrow, Papa? Please. I have so many more books I could show him, and I want to hear more stories about his city." Marcus studied Rashid's face carefully. The change in the man seemed genuine, but his protective instincts as a father remained strong. "Are you sure this is something you really want to do? Emma gets very excited about teaching, and she'll be disappointed if you change your mind." "I understand your caution," Rashid replied seriously. "You don't know me, and my first impression was terrible. But I give you my word as a son who loved his grandmother, as a man who wants to reclaim the heritage he foolishly abandoned, that I will never disappoint Emma again. This afternoon has been more meaningful to me than months of my usual activities." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, then seemed to think better of it and put it back. Instead, he wrote his personal phone number on a napkin. "My name is Rashid Al-Mansouri. I own several businesses in the city, but today I learned that success means nothing if you've lost your soul in the process of achieving it." Marcus accepted the napkin, noting that the handwriting was careful and respectful rather than hurried and dismissive. "I'm willing to give this a chance, but Emma's well-being comes first. Always." "As it should," Rashid agreed immediately. "She's an extraordinary child, and you've done an incredible job raising her. I hope someday I might have children who possess even half her intelligence and kindness." Emma had been listening to this exchange with growing happiness. "This is the best day ever," she announced. "I made a new friend. I got to practice my Arabic and I helped someone remember something important they thought they had lost." As Rashid prepared to leave, he turned back to Marcus with a serious expression. "I know this might sound strange, given how we met, but would you allow me to help with Emma's education? Not because I think you can't provide for her," he added quickly, "but because talent like hers deserves every opportunity to flourish. I have connections with language programs, cultural exchanges, perhaps even early admission to university, programs when she's older." Marcus felt his pride bristle slightly, but then he looked at Emma's hopeful face and forced himself to consider the offer objectively. His daughter's gifts were exceptional, and if this man could genuinely help her achieve her dreams, wasn't it selfish to refuse based on his own discomfort? "That's very generous," Marcus said carefully, "but Emma and I would need time to think about it, and any help would have to be offered as friendship, not charity." "Understood completely," Rashid replied. "Friendship is exactly what I'm hoping for. Emma has already given me something invaluable by helping me reconnect with my heritage. Anything I might offer in return would simply be one friend helping another." Emma looked between her father and Rashid with the intuitive understanding that children sometimes possess about adult dynamics. "Papa, I think Mr. Rashid really means it. He looks different now than when he first came in. His eyes are kinder." Rashid knelt down so he was at Emma's eye level. "Your papa is absolutely right to be careful. Good fathers protect their children, and I gave him every reason to doubt my intentions when I first walked in here. But I promise you, Emma, that I will spend as long as it takes proving that I'm worthy of being your friend." He stood and extended his hand to Marcus. "Thank you for this second chance. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful beyond words." Marcus shook his hand, feeling the sincerity in Rashid's grip. "Everyone deserves a chance to grow and change. Emma taught me that, actually. She sees the good in people even when they don't see it in themselves." As Rashid walked toward the door, he turned back one final time. "Emma, would you mind if I brought my grandmother's old Arabic poetry books tomorrow? I think you might enjoy them, and maybe they'll help me remember the stories she used to tell." Emma's face absolutely glowed with excitement. "That would be wonderful. I love old poetry books. They're like treasure chests full of beautiful words and stories from long ago." After Rashid left, the cafe felt different somehow, as if the afternoon's events had changed its very atmosphere. The other customers began to leave as well, but several stopped to compliment Emma on her remarkable abilities, and to tell Marcus how impressed they were with his daughter. Mrs. Chen was the last to leave, as usual. She approached the counter, where Marcus was cleaning up, her wise eyes twinkling with satisfaction. "That was quite an afternoon," she said softly. "I've seen many things in my 83 years, but I've rarely seen someone's heart change so completely in such a short time." Marcus nodded, still processing everything that had happened. "Emma has that effect on people. She sees the world differently than most of us do." "She gets that from you," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "Children learn kindness from their parents. You've raised her to be generous with her gifts and patient with other people's failings. That man was cruel when he arrived, but Emma's response to his cruelty taught him something important about character." As Mrs. Chen left, Marcus looked over at Emma, who was carefully organizing her language books and humming softly to herself. His heart swelled with pride and love for this remarkable little girl who had turned a moment of ugliness into something beautiful. "Papa," Emma said, looking up from her books, "do you think Mr. Rashid was telling the truth about wanting to be friends?" 3 months later, the small cafe had become something neither Marcus nor Emma could have imagined. What started as a simple coffee shop had transformed into an unofficial cultural center, a place where people from all backgrounds came not just for Marcus's excellent coffee, but for the unique atmosphere that Emma and her growing circle of friends had created. Rashid had kept his promise, visiting every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon for Arabic lessons with Emma. But he had brought more than just his grandmother's poetry books. Word of Emma's extraordinary abilities had spread through his business networks, and soon the cafe was receiving visitors from around the world, all eager to meet the young polyglot who was becoming something of a local legend. On this particular Thursday, the cafe was bustling with an unusual mix of customers. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a linguistics professor from the nearby university, sat at a corner table grading papers, while occasionally glancing over at Emma with professional fascination. At another table, Chen Wei, a visiting businessman from Shanghai, was helping Emma practice her Mandarin pronunciation, while his translator looked on in amazement. "Your tone on the third character is perfect now," Chen Wei told Emma in Mandarin, his face beaming with pride. "You speak better than my nephew, and he's been studying for 3 years." Emma giggled, responding in fluent Mandarin. "Thank you for being so patient with me. I love how Chinese changes meaning with different tones. It's like music and language, combined into one beautiful thing." At the counter, Rashid was deep in conversation with Marcus about a proposal that had been growing in his mind for weeks. The wealthy businessman had proven true to his word, becoming not just Emma's Arabic tutor, but a genuine friend to both father and daughter. His transformation had been so complete that Marcus sometimes forgot how terribly their relationship had begun. "I know this sounds ambitious," Rashid was saying, his voice filled with excitement, "but I truly believe Emma could benefit from attending the International Youth Language Summit in Geneva next summer. It's invitation only, restricted to the most gifted young linguists in the world. The networking opportunities alone could shape her entire future." Marcus paused in his coffee preparation, considering the proposal carefully. The cafe had become more successful than ever, thanks partly to the attention Emma's abilities had brought, but international travel was still far beyond their budget. "Rashid, you know how grateful I am for everything you've done already," Marcus said quietly. "The language books, the cultural exchange programs, introducing Emma to all these visiting scholars. But Geneva would be my honor to sponsor," Rashid finished firmly. "Not as charity, but as an investment in someone who will undoubtedly make the world a better place. Emma has already changed my life completely. Let me help her change others. Lives too." Before Marcus could respond, Emma's voice rose above the gentle chatter of the cafe. She was standing at her usual table, surrounded by books in various languages, addressing the entire room with the confidence of someone much older. "Excuse me, everyone," Emma announced, her clear voice carrying easily through the space. "I wanted to thank all of you for coming to our cafe and for helping me learn. Every person who visits here teaches me something new, not just about languages, but about the beautiful cultures and stories that languages carry." The conversations in the cafe gradually stopped as people turned to listen to the 9-year-old, who had become the unofficial heart of their gathering place. "3 months ago, I met Mr. Rashid, and he taught me something very important," Emma continued, looking directly at her Arabic tutor with affection. "He showed me that sometimes people act mean because they've forgotten something important about themselves, but with patience and kindness they can remember who they really are. Languages helped us become friends because they reminded him of his grandmother's love." Rashid felt his eyes mist over as he remembered that first day, how close he had come to missing out on this extraordinary friendship because of his own arrogance and prejudice. Emma gestured toward Dr. Martinez. "Dr. Sarah has taught me that studying languages isn't just about speaking them, but understanding how they shape the way people think and see the world." The linguistics professor smiled warmly, having been impressed not just by Emma's abilities, but by her deep curiosity about the theoretical aspects of language acquisition. "And Mr. Chen has shown me that learning never stops," Emma continued, bowing slightly toward the Chinese businessman. "Even though I speak several languages, there's always more to discover, more ways to improve, more connections to make between words and meanings." Chen Wei nodded approvingly, touched by the young girl's respect for continuous learning, a value deeply embedded in his own culture. Emma's voice grew stronger as she reached the heart of her message. "But the most important thing I've learned is from my papa. He taught me that our gifts aren't meant to make us feel superior to others. They're meant to bring people together, to build bridges between different worlds, to help everyone understand that we're all connected by our hopes and dreams even when we speak different languages." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion as his daughter's words washed over him. She had grown so much in these 3 months, not just in knowledge, but in wisdom and maturity. So today, Emma announced with a bright smile. I want to propose something special. What if we made our cafe into an official place where people can come to practice languages and learn about different cultures? Papa and I have been talking about it, and we think it could be wonderful. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Dr. Martinez spoke up first. The university would love to support something like that. We could send student teachers here for practical experience. Chen Wei nodded vigorously. The Chinese Cultural Center would be honored to participate. We could sponsor weekly Chinese language and culture sessions. Similar offers began pouring in from around the room. The French consul's wife, who had become a regular visitor, offered to organize French conversation groups. A Russian literature professor promised to bring her students for language exchange sessions. Even Mrs. Chen, now 83 and still sharp as ever, volunteered to teach anyone interested in learning about traditional tea ceremonies from different cultures. Rashid stood up, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making important announcements. As Emma's friend and someone whose life has been fundamentally changed by this place, I would like to formally establish the Emma and Marcus Cultural Bridge Foundation. This foundation will provide funding for language education, cultural exchange programs, and scholarships for gifted young linguists from all backgrounds. The cafe erupted in applause, but Emma looked confused. Mr. Rashid, that's very kind, but why would you name it after Papa and me? Rashid knelt down to her eye level, just as he had that first day when everything changed. Because, my dear friend, you two have shown all of us what real wealth looks like. Not money or possessions, but the ability to see the good in others, to share your gifts generously, and to build communities where everyone feels valued and respected. He stood and addressed the entire room. 3 months ago, I was a man who had everything money could buy but had lost everything that actually mattered. Emma and Marcus didn't just teach me Arabic pronunciation. They taught me about kindness, humility, and the true meaning of success. Emma ran to her father, wrapping her arms around his waist in a fierce hug. Papa, can you believe how wonderful this is? Our little cafe is going to help people from all over the world learn and grow. Together, Marcus hugged his daughter tight, overwhelmed by how their simple life had expanded into something so much larger and more meaningful. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Not just because you're brilliant with languages, but because you have the biggest, kindest heart I've ever known. As the afternoon sun streamed through the cafe windows, illuminating the faces of people from dozens of different countries and cultures, all brought together by the extraordinary spirit of a 9-year-old girl and her devoted father, everyone present understood they were witnessing something truly special. The transformation was complete. What had begun with cruelty and prejudice had blossomed into friendship, understanding, and hope for a more connected world. Emma's gift for languages had become a gift for humanity itself, proving that sometimes the most powerful bridges between people are built not with steel and stone, but with words, kindness, and the courage to see the best in one another. And in the corner booth that had always been Emma and Marcus's special place, now decorated with flags from around the world, and thank you notes written in dozens of languages, father and daughter sat together planning their next adventure and building bridges across the beautiful, diverse tapestry of human culture.